Welcome back, everybody. I'm Sean LaFlock. I'm here with Scotty Hagness. This is Conversations, Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity. Scott, how goes it?
Hey, it goes great.
I was saying earlier, it kind of looks like I'm looking at myself in the future.
Yeah, we do look a lot really similar. Like, you can take these off,
We
and
have
that
good, we
helps.
have good shaped heads, Scott. I think it's very
Yeah,
similar.
very similar. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. It's great when you can get the correct shaped dome to pull it off, right?
That's right, man. I like it every time that we do these conversations. I pick up on something else each time.
Hey, really, before we continue, so I'm looking at my image of you here on my phone, and I can't shake this image that you're sitting inside like a giant shark's mouth because there's like what appear to be teeth. Yeah, okay, yep. I saw just the bottom of them there. I
Yeah, it's a
kept seeing
little.
this.
It's like It's like a little banner there that they gave for Myra as she got back to the games from the games. So that's actually a nice little segue to kind of
Yeah,
complete what we were talking about
awesome.
last week.
Yeah.
We got back from the games on Monday, and it's Friday as of recording this here. So kind of wrap up where we left off. And last week we left off on a Friday, and Myra had just finished her first workout of the day, which was the 2 rounds. It was a shoulder to overhead max, and then 2 rounds of 1,000-meter row, 750-meter ski erg, and then 50 dumbbell squats at 50 pounds. She came back in the afternoon looking pretty good, and it was rope climbs. So it was a 300-meter run around the outdoor stadium, followed by 4 rope climbs to the Zeus rig. You know, that like basically a 20-foot rope climb. And then a yoke carry with 380 pounds, and then they did that for 4 rounds, and the rope climbs went 4, 3, 2, and 1. So going into this one, and as I talked about last time, I believe is really taking this one conservatively because last year she blew up on this one and then basically cost her the entire weekend. So I know running would probably be an issue with her hamstring problem and her knee problem. Though in the beginning of the weekend she had a run workout where she did okay, but I knew at this point because of the tweak she had on Wednesday she was going to have an issue with the run. So I said, let's treat this really, really conservatively, be very efficient on your rope climbs, and hopefully the yoke won't be too much of an issue. During the warm-ups, the yoke was an issue. She had a real hard time standing up with it. The height of the yoke was standardized, so she really couldn't remember what size yoke she was using, so it was hard to kind of like, she was kind of, it was, in terms of figuring out the weight also, there was some issues, but the yoke ended up being fine. She did all the yoke carries unbroken for 44 feet with 380 pounds. The place where I think became an issue was the rope climbs. Her first rope climb descent, she fast roped down using her thighs, crossed over to control her descent, and her pants burned right through instantaneously.
Oh,
And then she did a few more reps, and each rep that she did, she started ripping the skin off the inside of one of her thighs.
oh boy.
So by the end of it, it was like bleeding and raw. And at the end of it, she was sitting down there, and they had the camera, zoomed in her as he finished across the finish line. And sure enough, there's like the inside of her thigh just completely raw and bloody. It was like, almost like an advertisement for some kind of female hygiene products. So it was a bit of an embarrassment, but overall, I thought she did really well in that workout. I was just really frustrated with the way that she did rope climbs. She says like, well, these were higher than our regular rope climbs. I'm like, that doesn't make a difference. Like, it's the same technique. It's like saying like this row was longer than the last row I did. I'm like, well, it's the same thing. It's just you're just doing the same technique
I
over
used
and
a
over
whole
again.
different style when I wrote 2K instead of 500 meters.
Exactly. But what it came down to, I think, a bit like looking at the film, and I was on the live stream saying it. As she secured her feet, and we talked about this in warm up, she wasn't actually securing her feet and being able to push down and step up. You could see that her feet were sliding down as she stood up, and kind of let that get the best of her a little bit. So
is this partly from the calf hamstring issue she was having? Like she could maybe
perhaps,
dorsiflex
but I think it was just not being comfortable just on the rope, maybe, or maybe overthinking it, or not just paying attention to that aspect of it because we're thinking about going fast. So sometimes that starts to sink in a little bit. But overall, I wasn't displeased with that workout. And again, I wanted to stay really conservatively so that she could save some for the weekend. And, spoiler alert, um, the way that she looked on Sunday versus the way she looked even on Saturday last year was night and day. Like her morale, her vigor, her warm ups, like she wasn't like a dead man walking. She was like, all right, I'm good. Like, let's go. And I was actually really, really excited about that just because then you're not fighting against something that is just like, well, I hope she just doesn't die. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So last year that was, I think, a big thing. So I'm really pleased with that in general. And it shows that, there's probably going in the right direction in terms of our training and in terms of also the rest that we took going into this. And that was something that her and I were battling with. She's like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything. I don't feel like I'm ready. I'm like, it's not about Friday. It's not about Saturday. It's about, do you have it on Sunday? Because those are the workouts that mean the most, because these shorter workouts, 30 seconds can be 10 places. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, it turns out it kind of was. So Saturday comes along. Obviously, Friday was like the day where she was just like, just get through this thing because her calf was just so blown up because there was tons of squatting. And then there was, the running in a single day. So we get to Saturday, which was we started off with 3 back squats at 185 into 6 muscle ups. They had to do 5 rounds there. And then it was 30 box jump overs to finish off the workout. Obviously, going into that workout, her biggest concern was being able to do the proper depth on the back squat. But as she warmed up, it seemed to be okay. They were just a little deliberate, and she was making sure that her judge didn't no-rep her. But the muscle up, she went unbroken on the first 3 sets, so 6 by 3 unbroken, and then she did 4 and 2, 4 and 2. She got to the box, I think, even with Anna Tobias, and then Anna Tobias kind of just turned it on just because Myra wasn't able to cycle the box jump overs quite as effectively as Anna was. But I believe she took 6th on that workout, which was good. I mean, I didn't have any problems with that, and I think she improved drastically from where she was the previous year on the muscle up. So again, making progress in the right places. The only place that she might have been able to do a little bit better was maybe just cycling through the back squats a little bit quicker. The second workout of the day, it was a complete disaster. It was the open water swim, 500 meters. And this is something that Myra had been working toward the entire year, because last year when they jumped in with the entire age group, she felt, basically a panic over her last year, and she basically had to like roll over and just, survive.
I remember, yeah.
She said she got clobbered, and that was that. But this year, I was able to be there and watch the swims, which was, again, great, because then I can kind of see exactly what happened in a more objective perspective. So they all got to the end of the entering the water, kind of like if you were putting your boat into the water, like the launch. So they were all into about knee-deep water, and then they go. And they make a right, and they're kind of into a shallow area that technically you could just put your feet down and kind of like wade through in about chest-high water. So my recommendation to her was, like, after that little initial turn, wade through the water, use your arms, use your legs, and just kind of run through the water, and that'll allow you to continue to breathe and make progress. And there were some people in the previous heat were actually catching people and passing them. And then once you got to the buoy, that's where the water became a little bit deeper, and then you had to finish up the swim. So there was technically a passage of about 50 to 75 meters where you could actually just run and wade. By the time she got to that area, she had already started to panic, and she was kind of just bobbing up in the water. And, then she was kind of in a big, crowd of people, and she basically panicked and kind of just slowed down and let everybody go past her and kind of survived that workout. So that was, for me, that was disappointing. But, again, like, I choose to be disappointed. I could also see it in another way of just saying, it is what it is. This is where we're at. And if I sit here being disappointed, there's no way we're actually going to be getting better at what's going on. So my plan going forward for that, once she's back and healthy, is to get as many people from our gym to the beach and get in the water together and swim together, and just do it over and over and over again, and treat it like any other conditioning of the brain. We just got to get comfortable with it.
Get comfortable, yeah. Eventually have them coming awkwardly close and, various things. And yeah,
And if for a person who has any kind of hang-ups about personal space, you have no personal space in the water. Your personal space is non-existent. You're just going to be amongst everybody
yeah.
else. Have you ever swam open water, Scotty?
I have not, outside of, just messing around on the beach. Swimming is one thing I've never done a lot of, and I'm very marginal swimmer.
Yep. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess I take it for granted, but when I was doing my triathlon days, I kind of got into the water, and I had just a comfortability about being around other people, and maybe it's just the idea that I know I'm not going to die.
Yeah.
I think that kind of what it
Yeah.
always boils down to is, in some sense, you feel like your life is in peril in one way or another, and you kind of freeze up.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it. It's not like any other workout, right? You can always choose to stop. Oh, I was saying that, um, it has a unique facet. It's not like in pretty much any
Yes.
other event, right? You can always choose to stop running or biking or stop doing deadlifts or pull-ups, right?
Yes.
If you have to, there's no consequence other than, pride and ego maybe.
Yeah.
But in the water, that's, it's a serious consequence if you
Yeah, that's one of the things
decide to
about
stop.
swimming in general. It's like you're surviving. So if you stop
Yeah.
swinging, you die.
Yeah.
So again, I think she was very disappointed, and at that point, the hopes of probably making podium kind of dissolved a little bit. But again, then it's just about making a new goal and making a new decision and seeing where you want to go from there, and kind of putting aside the fear and just going after it. So the final workout of the day was the chipper, where it started with 30 deficit handstand push-ups, 40 deadlifts, 50 calorie on the bike, and then 60 bar facing burpees. So the deficit was 3 inches, and I know Myra's handstand push-ups have been getting better and better, especially cycling through them in like a linear fashion where it's like, okay, you have to do a big chunk of them. So I think she did 2 sets of 10 and then 2 sets of 5 or something like that just to finish it up. Then she got over to the deadlifts, and they actually looked fairly good. She kind of hung, but then once we got to the bike, it was lights out. Or it was there was the distance between her and other athletes. Other athletes basically hammered it down. And during the warm ups, I got a chance to see Sam Brigg on the bike erg, and she
Uh-huh.
was holding like 1,400 calories per hour for like a good 2 minutes straight. So I kind of know what power really kind of looks like when it comes to this sport now, being face to face and in first person. But that's something that maybe it's part just natural physiology and DNA of the athlete for Myra, where when it comes to just a monostructural or a localized fatigue deal, she just doesn't have that ability to kind of just like stave off that localized fatigue enough where she can put out power.
Mm-hmm.
Have you dealt with that in many athletes, Scott?
Yeah, I definitely had, that are kind of a bit more of a potentially fast twitch in nature. Uh, and I have some, thoughts maybe around it. Again, this is all just, anecdotal, about why we're maybe not getting enough oxygen to the tissues and things that could maybe be done there.
Well, Scott,
Uh,
why don't you share?
well, I was thinking I do have some things I, have been playing with here, but maybe if you want to kind of wrap around,
Sure.
so, and then
All
we'll
right,
swing
we'll
back
put an
around and touch
earmark
on
on
this
that,
because
Scott.
we had already,
Yep.
yeah.
We'll earmark that one, then we'll move on to the final day. It started off with, it's called the core couplet. This was, as soon as they talked about this, I was like, oh no. So it was 3 rounds of 30 medicine ball GHD sit-ups with a 14-pound med ball, and then 10 sandbag cleans with a 100-pound sandbag. And I magic balled, my crystal ball, anticipated every single event except for this one. And even if I would have definitely gotten touches on it, but I definitely wouldn't put it in like a fatigue-based workout. But the GHD sit-ups were not something we touched at all. We did tons of toes to bar and V-ups and hollow bodies and all that kind of stuff. We did not do the GHD sit-ups. And if I knew that there were GHD sit-ups, I would have done them. But because I just don't like them for a number of reasons, including lower back and just tons of potential of overly fatiguing the midline, we stayed away from it. But doing them in this workout was relatively slow for Myra, and then she was able to kind of cycle through the sandbag cleans pretty cleanly, you know, pretty well. And I believe she finished ninth on that workout. And then the final workout of the day, and this was something that Dave Castro himself announced to the Masters. It was a 21-15-9 bar complex thruster. So it was 7 bar muscle ups, 7 chest to bar pull ups, 7 pull ups, and then 21 thrusters, followed by 5 bar muscle ups, 5 chest to bar pull ups, 5 pull ups, and then 15 thrusters, and then 3, 3, and 3, and then 9 thrusters to finish it off. So, you know, they always say, you know, like, do you have it? Does your athlete have the mental capacity? I mean, to be honest with you, if you have the ability, it makes it a lot easier to believe that you can do something. So going into this final workout, Myra was in 6th place. She was 4 points behind 5th, and the 7th place athlete was about 6 points behind Myra. So if she would able to like finish ahead of those girl in front of her and, you know, beat the girl behind her, she would have taken 5th place. So the plan was going into this final workout, unbroken on bar muscle ups, unbroken on, if she could, unbroken on the thrusters. And then drop from the bar on the bar muscle ups and then go right into the chest to bars, you know, drop, reset, and then go to chest to bars and go unbroken into the pull-ups. And Myra has some of the best gymnastics in the world when it comes to 35 and over, so I was pretty confident in this workout, and we hadn't had the bar yet, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why, you know, there was some difficulty this weekend, especially on the front half of it, but you know what? She had very good morale, good energy in that last workout. We weren't doing like taking shots of espresso just to kind of wake her up. She was ready for it, and she did well. She finished 4th on the workout. I believe Anna Tobias, Sam Briggs, and the 4th place competitor, who was Kelly Holm, were the only ones to beat her on the workout. She ended up beating Kirsten Pedri and I believe Helena Falk, who finished 3rd overall in the workout. So it was a great way to finish. She locked up 5th place on, you know, 2 bum legs and a terrible rope burn. And, you know, when we got done, I thought her, you know, again, morale was good. Energy was good. I mean, she probably could have done another few workouts if she needed to, you know, if her legs would allow her to. But, you know, I thought she did a lot better this year.
Awesome.
If there was one thing that we could definitely improve upon is accepting and moving on, you know, and understanding that a lot of the time your reaction is a choice, and we think that, you know, we have to be sad, we have to be upset, we have to be angry about what's been given to us. But I think that's very disempowering. I mean, there's accepting, you know, your own feelings, but once you accept it and you're aware that you feel that way or that you're responding that way, you can go ahead and then change your perspective. You have the power to do that. You know what I mean? And to what to focus on. It's like, yeah, I don't have this leg. Okay, you have 2 arms that work. You have another leg that works. You have a heart and lungs that work. Why not focus on those? Because we choose to focus on what we don't have and what's not working correctly based upon what our expectations were. Right? I mean...
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's something that we can definitely work on. I mean, it's not something you're just going to do overnight. You need points of reference, but I think that's something that Myra definitely can improve upon. And I can improve upon. You know, I have an expectation of what should happen, but as soon as I see that that's not there, I can go ahead and let go of that and just be more present. You know what I mean? I have the power to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And how's now that it's been most of a week? What kind of a rest and reflection are you guys doing?
So we haven't gotten to the reflection part yet. We had some time to talk after and kind of discuss some of the stuff. And, you know, I definitely think that there's some friction between us right now just because, you know, it's rough. It was a relatively traumatic experience, not only for Myra, but it was a challenging experience for me. Like, I question my want of coaching when things like this happen sometimes, but
Yeah.
it's also me focusing on the things that you know, that I lack or that I can't control or that have given me some kind of negative feeling. So if you
Mm-hmm.
only focus on the negatives, you're never going to want to do anything.
Right.
You
Right.
know.
Yeah. No, it's a, events are a trying time, especially when things don't go ideally, and yeah. So
Yeah, and
I have been there.
I think personally for me, like someone relying on me and leaning on me when I feel that they're uh, capable of doing it is not comfortable for me. And it exposes a part of me that it's like, yo, why don't you just pick yourself up? But
Mm-hmm.
again, we're always uncomfortable with the things that we're uncomfortable with in ourselves. So it's a mirror, right? So if I saw myself acting like that, I would be very judgmental of it. I'd be like, yo, get yourself up and just keep going forward. What are you doing? Like you're completely capable of this, but you're choosing to be weak right now. And that's me talking to myself, and in just saying this is kind of an actualization and awareness. But that's exactly kind of what happens when you're in these situations. You're exposing it. And that's why sometimes it's very beneficial with the right mindset to do things like this, because you can learn an immense amount about yourself and those around you.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes so much deeper than just, the nuts and bolts of the actual competition. It's
Yeah, if you wanted
the,
to. I
the
mean, you can.
learnings. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
can
mean,
keep
if
it
you
there,
if you
but
want to
yeah,
just
if you're
call, sometimes a cigar is a cigar, and you're just like, hey, I'm having fun and I'm enjoying it. I think for me, I could probably do a little bit more of that. But there's also a calling deeper to me that like some of these things are not just done in a box. They're like, okay, this is a challenge to your soul and to your purpose, and I see it much more like that now that I'm like 20 plus years into competing.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I now that we're kind of wrapped up this a little bit, we kind of wanted to circle back to the thing we earmarked, and about the localized kind of fatigue, especially in faster neuromuscular efficient athletes. You want to touch on that a little, Scott, and things that you've been kind of hypothesizing and mulling over?
yeah, for sure. And uh, I mean, I think one issue is probably that you're unable to get oxygen to the tissues as effectively as some others that don't seem to deal with the same level of fatigue. And of course, as someone who potentially is a little more fast twitch, that we're more likely to use anaerobic processes. So you have some genetic propensity in that direction. But what if, um, along with that, we were not um, operating at our capacity because we're perhaps using ineffective methods of breathing through our workout. So
Mm-hmm.
we've touched on some breathing, how I've been really kind of going down the nasal breathing rabbit hole and restricted kind of apnea work to try and increase carbon dioxide levels in the body and tolerance to carbon dioxide. And I've been doing it myself for a while. And I think we talked about, how I did the all day mountain bike ride, nasal, and meanwhile, I've had a number of athletes working on this. Now I'm getting more feedback over the last few weeks as more people are going a little further down this rabbit hole. And I didn't always share my findings with some of these people. I gave a, we're doing this. This is, why. But I've been reported back several times from people who I did not go and preface this with uh, this is shocking. I did not get sore from it whatsoever. Um,
Hmm.
it seems that and I don't know the physiology behind it. I do know I've seen others write on this now, but it seems in a way that you do not develop the same soreness as you would expect, or fatigue. Actually, I know that several of the games competitive individuals that were at the games, the Panchek brothers, for example, and I think Tia Claire as well, um, noted no soreness or fatigue whatsoever from the marathon row, which was done nasal breathing for those individuals.
Really?
Um,
Wow.
anyway, yeah, all except for I think one of the maybe it was might have been Scott Panchik maybe noted that in the last 1,000 he used his mouth some as he was sprinting at the end,
Mm-hmm.
which is completely expected once you tap into the absolute highest, percentage of effort. You're going to have to do that. But the lack of soreness. So when I know from doing, muscle oxygen monitoring, like the Moxie unit, where we can actually look at, muscle oxygen levels and also hemoglobin.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely, you want to be able to offload the oxygen. So just because you have enough oxygen in your blood, of course, does not mean it's getting to the tissues appropriately, and you need carbon dioxide for that. So I am wondering if, long story, or if you have some of that fatigue that the more fast twitch individuals experiences probably can be combated by actually developing proper breathing techniques through, a significant period of training, of course, to make a shift. Will they equal a more slow twitch counterpart? Probably not ever, but they may be able to derive significant benefit. That's the thing. I think, in what I've seen and in the few people that I have had some time in it, is like, I feel like we're making improvements that I've not seen, you would not expect from people that have been training for a very long period of time and kind of really know historically where you're at and what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
An avenue for sure to explore. And some of the other benefits, as well as starting the training in this manner, is that it actually is going to develop, tidal volume, so full capacity of the lungs, because you basically start stretching everything out each breath you're taking in a training session, because you're trying to increase the volume to compensate for the fact that it will feel like you're breathing somewhat restricted. So you're getting more volume. You have to engage your diaphragm correctly. It's much more difficult to use crappy breathing mechanics when you're breathing nasally, especially at higher efforts. And then, of course, the aforementioned increase in carbon dioxide, allowing greater oxygen delivery to the muscles and utilization.
It's interesting, Scott. When I did the postural respiration course, they talked that the presenter or the instructor actually talked about how for all of her athletes that she trains, she recommends only nasal breathing. Obviously there's probably like so much to it, but a few of the things that they just happen to touch on, one of them being the fact that I believe nasal breathing, the oxygen that hits the capillaries within the nose are actually, I believe it's like they hit nitric oxide. That's where
nitric oxide, yeah.
So that's where it hits, and you're able to actually utilize that rather than breathing through the mouth, where you're not going to hit that. Yeah. And then a couple other things are the fact that think about it this way. I mean, it's just kind of like the way you described it. If you have to breathe through your mouth, by default, you're probably not able to utilize, or you're not able to exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide quick enough to actually sustain the aerobic effort, right? So if you're sitting here, you have no problem breathing in and out through your nose. As soon as you start to exercise, it's going to be more and more challenging to just breathe through your nose until the effort is so challenging that you actually have to start breathing through your mouth, at which point you're probably, again, I've never done Moxie, I've never done lactate testing like this, but you could probably see a correlation between the amount of lactate production and then also off-putting and loading of oxygen and CO2 in red blood cells as you have to go from breathing through your nose to then breathing through your mouth. So it's almost like you breathe through your nose because it's obviously an effective way of aerobic work. But if you go to breathing into your mouth too quickly, it's almost like you're defaulting right into a more unsustainable lactate / high carbon dioxide state.
Bingo. Yeah, you are basically encouraging that lactic anaerobic state that we all want to avoid as much as possible to, stave off fatigue. Mouth breathing has a greater sympathetic response, so you're switching on, a sympathetic response at a time you may not want it. Whereas nasal breathing is very parasympathetic.
Let me ask you this, Scott.
Which,
Has anybody reported having issues with actually breathing in and out through their nose? Like in terms of like they're just constantly clogged or they're blocked? I mean, I know I have a deviated septum, so it makes it a little bit more challenging to exclusively breathe through my nose.
Yeah, so that can be a challenge at first. What's interesting is some of that is actually caused by not breathing through the nose. And what will happen is it will actually typically, over the course of doing it, will actually clear up.
Got it.
So there's, and I noticed that too. There's times that, I feel like, okay, yeah, nose, whatever. And then as you get going, boom, I'm clear, crystal clear. So that, that is trainable, and as well will to some degree take care of itself. The process of the training.
Do you think like a little nasal strip could possibly help on this there, Scott? One of those like breathe right strips, or do you not even play around with that?
I haven't tried that. I've never used one. In theory, it might.
Yep.
If you open up the pathways a little bit.
Yep.
And again, I think it's like so many things, right? If it's a bit of a use it or lose it proposition. If you don't use it a lot, why wouldn't it be used to store mucus and things, and it doesn't really have a stimulus to stay clear.
Yep.
Outside of blowing it, of course, whatever. But that's kind of a secondhand or downstream thing, rather than how it should naturally stay relatively clear and free.
Yep. Very interesting, Scott. Yeah, I will have to start actually exploring that myself and maybe do some objective testing, figure out some objective testing protocols to kind of test and retest that. Is there anything in particular that you would recommend?
Yeah, I haven't standardized any tests. This is something I've been thinking now, how I would do that. I mean,
you're on the spot, Scott. Think of
general. Yeah, I mean, just a general way I would train this is folks starting it with the warm-up circuits, your nasal breathing there, and then after a small amount of time adjusting it out, then some monostructural aerobic group work at a lower effort, adjusting there, then moving into more simple mixed modal and higher efforts, or you could also do more interval type based monostructural, and then eventually on into more higher output mixed modal work.
Yep.
Over time as a way to progress. So having a test that could be completed, it would have to be a monostructural test, low skill. I mean, I would almost certainly use some sort of an airdyne test. Maybe it's as simple as a 300 FY, but done nasally.
Yep.
As a pre and post.
Yeah, and basically what you're trying to do here, Scott, I suppose, is you're trying to go as hard as you can while breathing through your nose.
Exactly. Yeah.
And progressing the output that you can actually do. So it's like almost ensuring that you're doing aerobic work.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yes.
Either that
absolutely.
Or you're
yeah,
that's one or the other. True. Just pass out.
fall off the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this, Scott. I think this is something that I'll probably test within myself for a block and about a 6-week block, and then do a retest and see how that does for me personally. But maybe explore it with a few of my clients as well.
Yeah. If you go with that, you guys have assault bikes, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll do a 10-minute max calorie through nasal breathing, and then we'll do a retest of it.
Yeah.
We'll get some data points.
I will. Also go with one, and I'll run some people through that. Unfortunately, it's going to be a largely post for me, but it'll be interesting to, I guess, see what it would compare with my old, gasp through the mouth versions.
Yep. Cool. And maybe do a heart rate monitor as well on it, just to kind of maybe just to see what kind of heart rates are actually sustainable through nasal breathing as well.
Yeah. Heart rate will stay generally lower with nasal breathing.
That's what I figured.
And you'll be shocked how quickly your heart rate will drop between intervals and efforts if you do nasal breathing during the work and the recovery phase.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's something I've noticed and timed.
That's great. All right, cool. So we got some stuff to look at there, Scott. You got anything else for today?
No, I think that's a good one.
I like it, man. All right, Scotty. Well, I'm Sean LaFlock, and you can get me at Sean at CrossFitDarbyBeach.com.
I'm Scott Agnes. You can get me at scott@crossfitportland.com.
Scotty, have a great weekend, man.
Yeah, you too. Take care, brother.
Take care. Bye.
All right.